Ozzy Osbourne met three Metalhead girls who were rejected by society. Soft rain falls over a dimly lit street. The camera glides past puddles reflecting the orange glow of a street lamp. A faint hum of guitar strings echoes from behind an old brick building marked Millennium Sound Studios, Birmingham. Narrator. On a cold October night, Birmingham's air smelled of rain, iron, and forgotten dreams. Inside the old studio, the Prince of Darkness himself, Ozzy Osbourne, was finishing what might become his last great album. See you on the other side, but outside, three young women sat under a flickering streetlight, unaware that destiny was about to knock in leather boots. Cue melancholic electric guitar riff. They weren't waiting for fame. They were waiting for meaning. Emma, 21, a music student at Birmingham University, classically trained but suffocating under the rules of academia. Sophie, 20, a graphic designer working nights at a cafe to pay her rent, her wrists wrapped in silver chains that jingled with rebellion. Mia, 19, a literature student, poet of the unaccepted, scribbling lyrics about angels, demons, and human hearts that refused to fit molds. They looked like rebels, but what they carried was far heavier than eyeliner and metal bracelets. They carried the weight of not being understood. Camera pans to the studio door creaking open. A silhouette steps out. Leather coat, black hat, the faint glow of a cigarette. Ozzy. Girls, why are you sitting out here in the cold? The voice was unmistakable, warm yet gravelly, like it had lived through both heaven and hell. The three froze. Emma lifted her head first. Emma. At home, I'm constantly bombarded with advice on who to be, what to play, how to live. Here, at least, we can breathe. Sophie, voice cracking. My family says my phase will pass. I'm 20, but they still treat me like I'm 13. The man took a step closer into the light. Mia's eyes widened, her breath caught. Mia, wait. Are you Ozzy Osbourne? He smiled, that crooked, gentle smile that had melted and terrified millions all at once. Ozzy. Yes, love. I'm John Michael Osbourne, but my friends call me Ozzy. The streetlight flickered as if even the city recognized the moment. What none of them knew, not yet, was that this chance encounter would change Birmingham's metal scene forever. Inside the studio a few minutes later, they sat inside. The air smelled of old wood, vinyl, and a faint echo of Iron Man riffs. Platinum records lined the walls. Vintage amps glowed like relics from another time. Ozzy poured tea into mismatched mugs, steam curling into the dim studio light. Ozzy. So tell me, what's got three bright minds out here in the cold instead of inside somewhere warm? Emma. It's hard to fit in, Ozzy. I study music, but they mock me for loving metal. They say classical music is real art. Ozzy chuckled. Ozzy. Love, I've been misunderstood for 40 bloody years. But here's the trick. Stop waiting for approval. The world doesn't hand out permission slips for being yourself. Sophie. My boyfriend says I'd look prettier if I dressed normal. Sometimes I feel like being myself is exhausting. Ozzy's expression darkened. His eyes, once wild, now carried a calm kind of fire. Ozzy. If someone's trying to change who you are, they don't love you. They love control. When I met Sharon, she loved me exactly as I was. Crazy, loud, covered in chaos. That's real love. Sophie smiled faintly. The first real one in weeks. Mia. My professors say my metal lyrics are childish. They want essays about Milton and Shakespeare. But I see myth in Dio's Holy Diver. They don't. Ozzy leaned back, eyes gleaming. Ozzy. Mia, that's genius. They forget that War Pigs was a Vietnam protest song. Children of the Grave was about the next generation. You're not writing noise, you're writing truth. Mia blinked away tears. For the first time, someone had called her art legitimate. A mentor in the shadows. Just then, the studio door opened. Producer Dave peeked in, confusion on his face. Dave. Ozzy, everything all right, mate? Ozzy. Perfect, Dave. I'm having a cuppa with three brilliant young women, a musician, an artist, and a poet. Emma, Sophie, and Mia exchanged stunned glances. No one had ever defined them by their talents before, only by what they weren't. Dave grinned. Then they're in the right place. Stick around, girls. The boss has stories. Ozzy's stories filled the room like thunder. How Black Sabbath was accused of summoning darkness when all they did was mirror the world's chaos. How the media called them monsters while fans found meaning in their pain. Ozzy. The secret, loves? We weren't fake. We didn't follow trends. We turned our pain into sound. Sophie. So being authentic is more important than being perfect? Ozzy. Perfection's a myth, love. Authenticity, that's your soul's signature. Breaking the mold hours passed unnoticed. Emma's fingers traced the fretboard of a worn Gibson Les Paul. Sophie flipped through her sketchbook. Dark wings, stage designs, band logos. Mia scribbled lyrics like prayers. Ozzy watched them, remembering a younger version of himself. Wild-eyed, desperate to be heard. Emma. Do you think we could ever make music seriously? Not as a hobby, as a life? Ozzy smiled softly. Ozzy, of course you can. But the road's cruel, especially for women in this business. The trick is, start with passion, not fame. Fame's the echo. Passion's the sound, Mia laughed nervously. But what if people don't take us seriously? Ozzy. Love, people have been trying to take me seriously for 50 years. Still not sure they managed. The point is, you take yourself seriously. That's enough. Sophie hesitated, then pulled a small notebook from her bag. I write lyrics, too. I've never shown them to anyone. Ozzy's brow lifted. Go on, then. Sophie read, voice trembling. Broken mirrors reflect our souls. Society's mold we can't control. In the darkness, we find our light. Metal music makes us fight. Ozzy nodded slowly, visibly moved. Ozzy. That's magnificent, Sophie. Don't ever call yourself just a designer again. You're a songwriter. Don't waste this. The girls laughed softly, the kind of laughter that follows healing. Ozzy poured more tea. When a professor once told me paranoid was too simple, I said, mate, if simple can move 50 million people, let it stay simple. The studio erupted in laughter. For the first time in years, those girls didn't feel like outcasts. They felt seen. As dawn crept through the foggy glass, Ozzy walked them to the door. Ozzy, come back tomorrow. Bring your notebooks. Bring your heart. We'll make some real noise. The three stood in stunned silence. Emma, you really mean that? Ozzy, love, music saved my life. Maybe it's time it saves yours. Soft guitar chords rise. The sky turning pale blue over Birmingham's skyline. Narrator, softly. That night, under the rain-streaked light of an old studio, three young women found something stronger than fame or approval. They found faith in their own voice. And for Ozzy Osbourne, who had carried the crown of darkness for decades, this was something new. Not a concert, not a headline, but a spark. A spark that would reignite a city's metal spirit. Before we continue to Act 2, tell us where in the world you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Darkness. Share this story with a friend who believes in authenticity, because the fire you light in someone else might just save their soul. Soft thunder rolls over the Birmingham skyline. Inside Millennium Sound Studios, faint amber light spills across cables and amplifiers. The smell of old vinyl and fresh tea lingers. A slow guitar riff hums like a heartbeat as the morning begins. Narrator. They returned the next day, Emma, Sophie, and Mia, three souls on the edge of transformation. What started as a cold October encounter had become something none of them could name yet. But Ozzy could feel it. He'd seen that look before. The trembling spark of creation before it turns into fire. Ozzy stood by the mixing console, black coffee in hand. Morning, angels of darkness, he said with that crooked grin. Emma carried her old acoustic guitar, worn from practice sessions that never left her dorm. Sophie had her sketchbook tucked under her arm, filled with lyrics and artwork ideas. Mia clutched a small notebook, its corners bent and pages heavy with poetry. Ozzy. All right, loves. Rule number 1, music isn't about perfection. It's about truth. You tell the truth loud enough and the universe listens. He motioned to the instruments. Let's see what your souls sound like. Emma hesitated, fingers trembling as she strummed the first chords. A haunting melody filled the studio, soft yet powerful. Ozzy closed his eyes, nodding slowly. Ozzy. Good. You're not playing the guitar, you're talking through it. Keep that. Then came Sophie, picking up the bass. Her hands moved nervously, the low hum vibrating through the room like a heartbeat in steel. Ozzy smiled. You've got rhythm, love. You play like you've been carrying thunder in your hands. Finally, Mia stood before the microphone. Her voice cracked at first, quiet, unsure, but then something happened. The sound deepened, found its strength. The words she had written spilled out raw and trembling. We hide our truth beneath the skin, they cage our fire, but we burn within. Ozzy clapped once, loud and final. There it is! That's your voice. Don't ever hide it again. For the first time, the three looked at each other with unspoken understanding. They weren't just fans anymore. They were becoming artists. Days turned into weeks. The studio became their second home. Ozzy's mentorship was part chaos, part philosophy. He'd pace around, telling stories about the early days of Black Sabbath, the nights they were booed off stage, the newspapers calling them Satanists, the loneliness of fame, Ozzy. They called us monsters, love. But we were just scared kids with guitars. The world doesn't understand what it fears. He made them laugh, too. Ozzy. Once during a gig, I started singing Iron Man lyrics while the band was playing War Pigs. I just kept going. Confidence, girls, and that's all it takes. Laughter filled the studio, the kind that heals. But beyond the jokes, Ozzy's lessons went deeper. He taught them stagecraft, performance energy, and emotional discipline. Ozzy. Stage presence isn't about pretending. It's about feeling the song so deeply that the crowd feels it too. Every night I walk on stage as if I've got one last chance to prove why I'm alive. Mia scribbled it down in her notebook. Stage presence on living truth out loud. The fire within them grew, but so did the resistance around them. Emma's father, a strict accountant, arrived at the studio one evening. His voice was sharp, echoing off the studio walls. Mr. Thompson. Emma, enough of this nonsense. You're wasting your education on noise. Ozzy watched quietly from behind the console. Then in his calm yet firm tone, he stepped forward. Ozzy. Sir, I've seen what music does to people. It doesn't destroy them, it heals. Your daughter isn't lost. She's found. Emma's father frowned. Metal music isn't proper for a young woman. Ozzy's voice softened. Sir, I've raised daughters. I've seen the world try to box them in. Music gave Emma strength. You should be proud. She's expressing, not rebelling. The man paused. For the first time, he looked around, at the platinum records, the quiet reverence in the air. Then he looked at Emma, her fingers trembling over the guitar strings, eyes full of truth. He sighed. As long as you finish your studies, you can continue this hobby. Emma smiled faintly. It wasn't victory, but it was permission to breathe. For Sophie, the conflict came from love. Her boyfriend, Mark, waited for her outside the studio one night. Mark, you're changing, Soph. You used to be softer. Now it's all leather and lyrics. Sophie, I'm finally being myself. You should be happy for me. Mark, you'd be happier if you looked normal. She flinched. The words felt like shackles tightening again. But this time, she remembered Ozzy's voice. If someone's trying to change you, they don't love you, they love control. Sophie lifted her chin. Then maybe you loved who I pretended to be, not who I am. She turned and walked back into the studio, tears glistening but steps unshaken. Ozzy saw her from across the room and gave a small, approving nod. No words needed. She'd fought her first real battle, and won. Mia's battlefield was the university lecture hall. Her professor, Dr. Wallace, sneered as she presented her latest assignment, a lyrical analysis comparing Paradise Lost to Children of the Grave. Dr. Wallace, Miss Collins, this isn't academic writing. This is creative indulgence. Mia stood still, clutching her paper. Mia, with respect, sir, maybe creativity is what academia's missing. A few students snickered. But she didn't care. That evening, she told Ozzy what happened. He chuckled, eyes gleaming with pride. Ozzy, good on you, love. The system hates freethinkers until it needs one. Keep going. Weeks later, in a late-night session filled with exhaustion and excitement, they began composing their first original song. The title came naturally, Rising from the Ashes. Emma led with haunting piano chords. Sophie built a heartbeat rhythm beneath it. Mia whispered the first line, then sang it aloud. We are the echo of unspoken dreams, the ones they said could never scream. From the ashes we are reborn, in fire, not in form. Ozzy closed his eyes, letting the lyrics sink in. When the last note faded, Silence filled the room, the sacred kind. He finally spoke. Girls, that's professional-level songwriting. You've just written your first anthem. Sophie covered her face, overwhelmed. Mia's hands shook. Emma laughed through tears. It wasn't just a song. It was their rebellion set to melody. Ozzy stood before them, his voice steady, proud. Ozzy, now comes the hard part. Patience. Real music takes time. But you've got the spark. And trust me, sparks become fire. He paused, looking at each of them like a father watching his daughter step into the world. Ozzy, you've been told you don't belong. But from where I stand, you're the future of this city's music. Remember, authenticity is non-negotiable. Camera pans out slowly. Rain tapping on the window, a faint glow of streetlight bleeding through the blinds. Narrator. They came to the studio with doubts. They left with fire in their veins. Birmingham hadn't seen a transformation like this since the early days of heavy metal. And somewhere deep inside, the Prince of Darkness smiled, because he'd found light again, reflected in three young souls who refused to break. Well, if this part of the story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Darkness. Like this video and share it with your friends, because sometimes the fire that saves you is the one you dare to light inside others. 6 months had passed since that cold October night. The world hadn't changed much, but they had. Emma, Sophie, and Mia had burned through doubt, forged discipline in soundproof rooms, and found something sacred in distortion and verse. Their fire had a name now, Dark Seraphim, and tonight, for the first time, that name would echo through the small, legendary venue called the Sunflower Lounge. Backstage, the air smelled of sweat, cables, and adrenaline. Posters of every Birmingham act that had ever made it adorned the walls, from Judas Priest to Black Sabbath. Emma tightened her mic stand. Sophie tuned her bass in silence. Mia flipped through her lyric notebook one last time. Ozzy watched from the corner, half smiling, half praying. Ozzy, all right, loves. You've got two choices tonight, play safe or play real. Emma, what if they don't like us? Ozzy chuckled, that deep thunder of mischief. Ozzy, then make 'em remember you anyway. The lights dimmed. The announcer's voice cracked through the speakers. Please welcome, for their debut performance, Dark Seraphim. The room fell silent. Emma's fingers hovered above the strings. Then on a single haunting note, soft, then heavier. Sophie's bass joined in, low and pulsing like a second heartbeat. Mia stepped to the mic, trembling. We are the daughters of the unspoken, the voices they tried to drown in noise. We are Dark Seraphim, and this is our rise. The audience didn't cheer at first. They listened. By the second chorus, heads began to move. By the bridge, fists were in the air. Emma's voice soared, operatic yet fierce. Sophie's bass thundered with emotion. Mia's words hit like scripture in distortion. They weren't playing a gig, then they were confessing their existence. When the final chord crashed, silence hung, and then a roar. A standing ovation in the same city that had once told them to stay quiet. As applause thundered, a familiar silhouette walked out from backstage. Black coat, silver cross, grin wide enough to light the room. The crowd gasped. Ozzy, these three are the future. Birmingham's got new blood, and it bleeds truth. He turned to them. Ozzy, Emma, Sophie, Mia, you are my inspiration. Keep being authentic. Keep making real music. The world needs you. Flashbulbs popped. Phones recorded. But the girls weren't thinking about fame. They were thinking about the road that brought them here, and the man who believed before anyone else did. After the show, back in the studio, Ozzy poured tea the same way he had on that first night. The girls sat around him, tired, glowing, alive. Ozzy, you know I've seen hundreds of bands come and go, but you've got something rare. You're authentic. Don't lose that. He reached into his jacket and handed them an envelope. Emma, reading. What's this? Ozzy, a demo deal. My mate from a London indie label heard your track. He wants you to record an EP. The three froze. Tears welled. Their dream had just crossed from hope into history. Mia, whispering, you changed our lives. Ozzy, smiling softly. No, love. You changed yours. I just opened the door. During the final recording session, Ozzy gathered them close. The studio lights were dim. The hum of an amp filled the silence. Ozzy, fame will come. Maybe fortune too. But don't let the noise drown the soul. Stay humble. Stay weird. Remember, authenticity is non-negotiable. He paused, eyes glinting beneath the studio lights. Ozzy, being different isn't a curse. It's the only way to make something eternal. They nodded, silent. The lesson etched itself deeper than any lyric. The camera pans across posters plastered on city walls. Dark Seraphim, live at the custard factory. Crowds queue under neon rain. Inside, the same three young women now command the stage with fire. Emma's operatic voice cuts through distortion like light through smoke. Sophie's bass dances with confidence. Mia's poetry burns across the crowd like gospel in flame. Between songs, Mia steps to the mic. Mia, this one's for anyone who's ever been told to tone it down, fit in, or grow out of it. Remember what Ozzy taught us. You're different, and that's your superpower. The crowd erupts, and in the wings, Ozzy watches and smiling unseen. Narrator, soft, reverent. Years later, the name Dark Seraphim became more than a band. It became a movement. Young women across Europe started their own groups, their own art collectives, their own battles for authenticity. And every time a fan asked them where it all began, they'd say, in Birmingham, on a cold October night, when the Prince of Darkness taught us how to find our own light. The screen fades to black and then brightens to a quiet shot of the studio door under that same flickering streetlight. Rain falls. A faint echo of laughter. Somewhere a voice, Ozzy's, and whispers, you turned your pain into music, love. That's how legends are born. Fade out with a low guitar riff and the same one from Rising from the Ashes. That night wasn't just a meeting. It was a torch being passed. From one generation of outcasts to the next, Emma, Sophie, and Mia didn't just make music. They made meaning. And that meaning still echoes in every heart that refuses to fit the mold. If this story moved you, hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Voices of Darkness, where even in the shadows, light can rise again.